Good morning, I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to be taking you momentarily to a news conference being held by Destination Cleveland, City of Cleveland officials, as well as some officials from NASA discussing the April 8th, 2024 total eclipse, where Cleveland is in the path of totality. There's an idea that there will be a number of tourists who want to come and be in the path of totality. That's where the moon will block out all of the sunshine for that brief period of time. It's actually going to last only about 4 minutes. It will start at 3:13 in the afternoon. It'll be maxed out at 3:15. And then you'll start to get the sun back. We went through a full eclipse a handful of years ago, and it's about to happen again. Let's take you live now as they're about to set up this news conference.
For today's event, for today's presentation. So just a quick thank you to everyone for being here, and we're super excited to see the community's enthusiasm for the eclipse and are excited to get you as much information as possible. Before we dive in today, I did want to just share a couple brief pieces of information about Destination Cleveland. We are the nonprofit destination marketing and management organization for the region. What we do is we exist to change perceptions of Cleveland, attract people to Cleveland, and enhance the experience of visitors while they're in town. And so when we say Cleveland, we are referring to the entire region because to a visitor, Cleveland is much larger than just the city of. Visitors to our region do make substantial impact on our local economy. Prior to the pandemic, we were on track to see 20 million visits by the end of 2020. The pandemic had other plans for us, but we do continue to see positive growth recovery on the visitation side at a faster pace than originally predicted by travel experts. We are expecting our 2022 numbers to be in our hands early fall, but in 2021, Cuyahoga County saw 16.1 million visits, approximately $9.2 billion in direct business sales, about 5.5 of that being with direct business sales. Approximately 64,400 jobs are touch the travel and tourism industry, which is about 7% of all jobs in our county, in Cuyahoga County. And visitors generated $1.3 billion in tax revenue, which equates to an average savings of close to $1,200 per household in Cuyahoga County by visitors being in town. During the pandemic, we launched this Tourism Talk series, this webinar series, as a way to share high-level information and stay connected throughout the year. And we want to have as far as reach as possible with these. The reason is that while it is our job to get visitors to choose and come to Cleveland, it is all of you that really deliver on the Cleveland experience. That includes our hospitality partners, our community partners, our residents, and everyone that interacts with visitors while they're in town. So want to ensure that you all are informed and have everything you need to be welcoming to our visitors. And these have sort of been a vehicle for us to be able to do that. They've been super well received. We plan to continue to share information with you all in this format as long as they are working for all of you. So again, thanks for being here today. We are recording today's presentation, and we will share that with you via email next week. We do have time budgeted, and I'm going to share the agenda as I go through a couple housekeeping tips. So here's what we will cover today. As mentioned, we're recording. We will send this recording out to all of you that were invited so that you're able to touch base on some of the facts that we cover today. We also intend to do house this on our landing page, which Jen Kramer will share more of as we move through. For questions, we have the Q&A function activated. As we move through the content, please do submit questions in real time. If you are inclined, please do include your name along with your question. The reason for that is if it's a question that we're not able to get to live within our time frame today, we will do our best to get you an answer and follow up with you with that response. So go ahead and populate questions in that Q&A throughout the presentation, but know that we will reserve the last 10 minutes or so to get questions answered. And with that, That is all I have for now. So I would like to turn it over to Dr. Kelly Korick, who is Program Manager for the 2023-2024 solar eclipses for NASA. And taking it over to you, Dr. Korick.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm glad so many of you all decided to join us. Cleveland's a great city and right in the path of totality. So I am the program manager for the 23 and 24 solar eclipses, and I'm at NASA, coming to you from NASA headquarters today. Next slide, please. So we're talking about these two events. So the October 14th, 2023 event goes across the Western United States. And the one that's most important to this call is the April 8th, it's a Monday, 2024 total solar eclipse. That eclipse path goes through Mexico, up through Texas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, over Ohio, and then out through Canada. And this map is made by actual images and shape of the moon. So it's the shape of the actual shadow as it's going to go race across the US. It's going to make that long path in just over an hour. So this is a really unique and interesting phenomenon. Next slide, please. And there we are in Ohio. So what we're talking about here is when the moon actually comes in between the sun and the earth. And so it causes a shadow to be cast, as you see in the video, on the Earth's surface. And this happens actually around every 18 months somewhere on the planet. But in a specific location, it's normally between 300 and 1,000 years that you get a total solar eclipse. So it's really a rare thing and a once in a lifetime opportunity for folks in the city. Next slide, please. So the total solar eclipse. This is a picture of a partial eclipse going towards a total eclipse. And these are folks at NASA's JPL, a Jet Propulsion Laboratory, watching the 2017 eclipse. And the photo on your right is a picture of the total solar eclipse. Now, I have to say that it's much more, your eye can actually pick up much more than that photo, and it's much more spectacular, and it is a full body, full environment experience. Next slide. So there were two different eclipses that we're having. So in October, there's an annular eclipse, and that's going to be in the Western United States. And then you guys have the total solar eclipse. So the difference is simply the fact that the annular eclipse, the moon is further away from the Earth at that point in time, so it can't fully cover the sun. So it's the same as if you put your hand right in front of your face, you can cover up most things, and that's what a total solar eclipse is. And then when the moon's further away, you can't actually cover up. You can see things outside of it. So you can see the ring of fire. There's also the partial eclipse where folks outside of the path will see a partial solar eclipse. And that's just a phase in either of these other eclipses. Next slide, please. So this animation, if it is to play, could you click again and see if it'll play? It might not. There it goes. Well, this was an illustration to just show that why we don't have an eclipse every new moon is because the moon is actually tilted to the Earth. So we're not in line with the sun, the Earth, and the moon every time. So this is, again, that special every 18-month type of alignment. Next slide, please. So NASA has several priorities for the eclipse, and first is safety. It's in our mission to do this safely, and there is some basic eye safety as well as other types of physical safety during the eclipse. We want to make sure that we have broad participation. You don't have to be a scientist to participate. We want everyone to participate in this. There's science, public engagement, science activation, and citizen science. Next slide, please. So first, we want to know that observing our star, the sun, can be safe and inspirational. Next slide. And that experiencing this eclipse is one way that everyone can participate in NASA science. Next slide. And we explore our sun and its interactions with the Earth through innovative NASA missions, and we'll be able to learn more and more about these missions as we go through this year. Next slide, please. And the sun is having a big year. Although this eclipse is a really big deal, the sun is having an even bigger year. It's these eclipse efforts, it's our science, our missions, as well as some citizen science. So citizens actually doing science that is creating this big year. Next slide. And this big year is being built up right now, and then it will kick off in October with the annular eclipse, go through the total, and then through Parker Solar Probe's citizen science, Parker Solar Probe's closest approach to the sun. So it's the closest human-made object to the sun, and it will get its closest on December 24th, 2024, when the big year actually ends. Next slide. And with this, we're going to celebrate lots of things. So we're celebrating the eclipses, but we're also celebrating fashion and physical health and visual arts. And so in the time between the annular and the total solar eclipse, we invite folks to learn about our mission fleet, to learn about fashion and the sun, and experiencing it in different ways. And then also to continue afterwards as well. So it's not just the one event, it's actually a whole year. Next slide, please. And the goal is that you belong here. Everyone belongs to understand and to be able to experience this really unique event. Next slide. So now we're into safety. So we will need eclipse viewing tools to see this. And you will need eclipse glasses unless the sun is fully eclipsed. So during a partial eclipse, you're going to need those glasses, and they're going to need to be on your face. And if you don't have glasses, you can use a pinhole projector. So there was the instructions on how to make a cereal box into a pinhole projector. And that means the sun will be at your back, and you'll be looking at an image of the sun until it goes completely dark. And then when it's completely dark, we really want you to look at the solar corona. We spend a lot of time trying to get a picture of that solar corona. So being able to view it with your own eyes and seeing how the things are streaming away from the sun, we really want you to experience that. Next slide, please. So again, these eclipse glasses are not sunglasses. So do not use your sunglasses. You will damage your eyes. It's called solar retinopathy, which will actually burn images of the solar eclipse into your eyes. So you do want to make sure that you have appropriate glasses. In 2017, there were some issues with fake glasses. We are working with vendors, and we have the American Astronomical Society has a list on their website of vendors that have been verified in terms of their meeting ISO standards to protect your eyes. But we also have fun things to do with these glasses, like activities for kids that they can make crowns or other things to decorate their glasses in order to make sure that they can view safely. Next slide, please. Another indirect viewing method is 3D printing these beautiful maps and having the pinhole that allows you to, again, to project that with your back at the sun, the images of the eclipsing sun, the partial eclipse. Next slide, please. And you can even just use your hands. You can make your hands into a pinhole projector to project those images, or even a kitchen colander. So this doesn't have to be a very expensive situation. You can do things for free. Next slide, please. NASA has an eclipse website that has resources and information about safety. And there's a QR code down here, and it's at solarsystem.nasa.gov/eclipses. And that will give you information about all the things that I've referenced here. Next slide, please. So again, some of the resources are that beautiful map. There are fact sheets. There are posters there to print out, and we're actually having a poster contest. So more posters will be coming over the years to highlight what the eclipse looks like. Next slide, please. And for teachers, there are mini lessons. So it's at mynasadata.lark.nasa.gov/phenomenon/solar eclipses. And this will enable folks that this is all up to standard. So if you know a teacher, you can direct them here and they'll be able to find lessons about the eclipse. Next slide, please. And there are many other ways to get involved. So the Heliophysics Education Activation Team, or NASA HEAT team, will have a variety of activities. They've provided those also that are on the website. The Eclipse Soundscape Citizen Science Project, you can go online and register. You'll actually listen to the animals as they experience the eclipse, because it's not just humans that react to the eclipse. It basically is a fake nighttime. So folks or animals also react to that. The Eclipse Ballooning Project, there's 50 teams that are going to launch balloons, scientific balloons. These are college students who are learning about ballooning and scientific instrumentation through this. The Eclipse Ambassadors are actually off the path, trying to teach folks about the partial eclipse and how to view that safely. Earth to Sky is national parks and making sure their interpreters are able to explain how to safely view this eclipse. They're Navigating the Path of Totality is a series of broadcasts both in English and Spanish. And Science Through the Shadows is a planetarium show that's also a flat screen version to show you some safety messages as well as the science of the eclipse. Next slide, please. So we also have a newsletter. If you're interested in getting more information, when we announce more of our sunspots, which are the locations where folks will be viewing the eclipse from, when we announce other opportunities to perhaps look for a speaker for the eclipse, this is where we will do some announcements. So if you'd like to subscribe, there's the QR code, or the URL is there, and we will make sure that these slides and this recording gets to you. So the next slide, please. And then I will turn it back over. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Korick. That was amazing information. I do want to call upon Brooke Kaufman as our next speaker. And just to reiterate on the total solar eclipse of 2024, Cleveland being on the path of totality, we do expect total darkness to happen at 3:13 p.m. on April 8th. So it is in the middle of the day. The last time that there was a total eclipse was 2017. So Brooke is here and to share her experience in leading efforts in Casper, Wyoming. So turning it over to you, Brooke.
Awesome, Jen. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for the opportunity to be here. I'll go ahead and get to my first slide. I appreciate that Jen shared with everybody that your eclipse is at 3:13 p.m. Just as we were prepping for this call, one of the things that I mentioned is a lot of people in our community were really confused about what time of day the eclipse was, and they thought they would have to get out of bed to view it. So I appreciate that lead into that as we talk about some of the opportunities. So again, as Jen mentioned, I was the CEO at Visit Casper when we were preparing for the eclipse in 2017. Today, my presentation will be brief, but I hope to share some of the honest truths about what our community went through, some things that we did really well, some areas that we probably epically failed, and what some of the economic impacts are, and then the outcome on our community. So next slide, please. So the eclipse prior to 2017 was in 1979, so there wasn't social media, and the news coverage looked a lot different. So I can't tell you that Casper, Wyoming always knew that the eclipse was coming. So truthfully, we didn't really have a clue until in 2012, the Astronomical League came and said, we're gonna rent out an entire hotel for this conference. Casper was designated as one of the top viewing spots because of the altitude and the probability of clear skies. So as you guys get closer to this, you're gonna hear a lot about that in your community. And again, as I mentioned, it was the first eclipse since 1979, so nobody really understood what to expect. So next slide. So I just thought I would share, and I've had the opportunity to travel to several communities as they've prepared for this eclipse as well. And it's always the same. There's a couple of camps. There's that first camp who are the skeptics who say no one will travel for this, no one's coming for this, no one believes this, like I wouldn't walk the street for this thing. And then on the other side, you've got people who are very sensational and hundreds of thousands of people will come. You know, there's going to be maybe chaos in the streets. It's certainly going to be this enormous once in a lifetime event. And I remember as Casper was starting to prepare, and it was really difficult to figure out how many people were coming. We had a presentation at City Council, and one of the city staff was saying, you know, one of the council members asked, well, what will happen if 250,000 people out of 55,000? You know, he swore that the sewer systems would explode. So you can imagine, you know, the interesting conversation we have at a city council meeting about when your sewer systems are going to explode, which actually isn't even possible. So all this to say that it would be completely normal in your community if you have people who are like, absolutely, people are coming. and absolutely people won't travel to this. So next slide. I'll just touch quickly on this one, and not knowing necessarily who all is in the audience and what you do every day, but I will tell you in our community, no one wanted to take the lead. So here we understand that that nobody really wants to take responsibility for it or the organization. It's awesome to see Destination Cleveland step into this. I know that some of your first responders are really starting to participate in this as well, which is so neat to see. I got a call from my city manager who said I need to see you because I knew they were going to ask tourism to take the lead on this. And I was like, I'm not doing this. Ultimately, it did twist my arm. I said, we can't do it without your resources and your money. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we had a really hard time. It took us a really long time in our community to figure out who was going to be responsible for this effort. So the setup. So these are the people who were at the table at the beginning when we started planning for the eclipse. These are not the people who were at the table at the end. So whatever you're doing in your organization, make sure that there's a little bit of depth because inevitably there'll be turnover. So our chief of police wasn't there anymore. Our city manager wasn't there anymore. Economic development, same thing. So the setup was we raised seed money. So we said, hey, we can't take this on our own, but it was a community effort to raise just a little, maybe around $150,000. We'll get into that. For us, and I'm not sure if Cleveland's going to do this, but we did set up a separate 501c3. We did it so we could hire staff, but we also wanted that layer of protection from a liability perspective. So for Casper, that just happened to be the way that we went. There's lots of opportunities in this. Next slide. So we set priorities. So we did hire a director of what was called the Wyoming Eclipse Festival. And you can imagine when we post a job description for an executive director of the Wyoming Eclipse Festival, people are like, what in the world is going on in rural Wyoming? So we did have applications from all over the world, actually, 41 applications. We did hire, this is Anna Wilcox, she was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at the time. But her goal for the 18 months leading up to this was raise funds, raise awareness, educate our local community about what's coming, and then create a plan that our community could support. So it was very important to us that we didn't take a top-down approach, and we'll get into that in just a second. So that was probably one of the things that we did the very best at is we created an event that was unique to Casper because we let the community. So I hope in Cleveland, as you guys get ready to welcome people, that different agencies, whether it's a nonprofit or a business, they really take the opportunity to create things that are unique to Cleveland and give people who choose your community that really great experience. So it just is better than saying we're going to do one festival, this is controlled by one group of people. So I would just encourage you to say, how do we make uniquely Cleveland? It also builds ambassadorship, and then people take real ownership of educating the community, getting excited about it, and welcoming your guests when they come. So this is an actual picture of I-25 after the eclipse. So we'll talk about that, but I know that I heard Jen say that ODOT is actually starting to be in communication. So one of the things that we really didn't understand at the time is our city manager was we were all scared, right? We didn't know what to expect. There was a lot of fear mongering. And he said, Brooke, if we get too many people in Casper, Wyoming, I'm going to shut down I-25. I'll just close the arms and it's game on, like it's over. If I can't get a fire truck down the street, same. So our promotion of the festival and the eclipse in our area of Wyoming, actually all of Wyoming, was very conservative. Our elected officials encourage us to focus on education instead of inviting people. So that's really the approach that we took. So overall, and we're a much smaller destination, but we literally spent $25,000 to promote this thing, and that's it. So there was a lot of fear, and I think that's the difference between this eclipse that you guys are getting ready to experience, is that there's just a lot more information. Next slide. Thank you. So these were some of the headlines about traffic. So the Wyoming solar eclipse traffic jam was one for the record book. So you can see that photo there. And then the Colorado Department of Transportation. So they're just south of Wyoming. They said, hey, take your selfie with this sign. Please stop pulling over. So a typical day from Casper to Denver is 4 hours. And this took between 9 and 10. So this is what happened for us immediately following the viewing of the total solar eclipse. So people were on the move. They wanted to get home. And that's one of the misses for us. So how do you prepare a community? Well, I love that you guys are already doing this. You've got plenty of time to think about it. You've got the right people talking about the right things. We did a lot of things. We did things we didn't need to, but I'll just share a few highlights that were helpful. So the first is we hosted business forums like this where we invited our community in to really better understand. At the time, we learned from people like RAGBRAI, which is a big bike ride in Iowa. We invited Sturgis to come over to talk about how does your community go from a few thousand to hundreds of thousands, and how do we do that well? So But one of the other things too, and I think we had the opportunity to learn a lot from each other, is we hosted roundtables for like businesses. So our hotels got together and said, how are we going to handle breakfast items? How are we going to handle toilet? How are we going to handle parking? Our banks got together and said, do we need to have international currencies available? How often will we fill ATM machines? So it's not anything that we as the tourism office would have known how to help people with, but it was really neat to see industries come together to say, how can we plan for this and do this really well? So how much did it cost? Well, I can tell you when we started, I didn't think it was going to cost anything for us to do this. I thought, oh, well, we'll raise a bit, we'll hire someone, we'll just call it good. And at the end of the day, it ended up costing us around $250,000 to do this. And again, Casper, Wyoming is 55,000 people. So the money came from a couple different places. One is we raised it from the partners who you saw that slide, that was about 190,000. We had people affiliate with us, and we raised some money there, about 25. Sponsorships, we did very poorly, so we'll share that as a miss. And then merchandise. A lot of people wanted to take home T-shirts, newspapers, cooler bags, anything that would fit in their suitcase. So we raised about 25,000. So what did it generate on the next slide? For our little area for that 5 days, visitor spend was generated about $7.5 million in economic impact. The tax receipts were around $500,000. In Casper, we saw 21,000 people, and I'll share about how we captured that. The state of Wyoming saw around 100,000 people. You're going to hear me say this. We probably could have welcomed more. We did this through Dean Runyon and Associates. So we actually had a research project commissioned. Two reasons. One, we wanted to be able to back out this impact to say this is what happened in 2017 that we can't recreate again. But two, everybody wanted to know, what did it generate? Will they come back? How much did they spend? And that was the way that we captured it. So that was actually led by the Wyoming Office of Tourism. Really good job on there. So quickly, this slide, it was the largest tourism event that Casper, Wyoming will probably ever see in its lifetime. We generated 225 million media impressions. We hosted all the majors because we had that huge opportunity for clear skies. So we had NBC, Time Magazine, CNN, BBC, CBS. So I know somebody in your community is thinking about, where are we going to host scientists? Where can we put the press if they come? So that was a big deal for our little bitty community. The next one is lodging impact. So always your hoteliers say, well, what happened in the lodging space? The eclipse is a very short window of time in a month. So for an overall month, when you look at that, the impact won't be significant. We saw a bump for the month in 30%. And this is on one of the following slides, there was some price gouging, and we'll talk about that as well. So we'll see what happens in Cleveland. So quickly, just to wrap this up, I'm going to talk about some things we did right, wrong, and things we would do different. So the next slide is what went right. We raised that seed money, hired a director, we created a corporate strategy, we let the community tell us what they wanted this to be. We had our A team, which was all of our first responder groups, the hospital, the public health department. They met on a monthly basis leading up to this, and then they went into a weekly rotation. That really helped tremendously. And then one of the things that we did too is this map. So we ordered it on Amazon for $90, probably cost us $2,500 to frame the dang thing. But anyways, everybody who came ended up on a street corner downtown, and they got to put a pin in the map. And it's probably the most, outside of the eclipse, probably the most photographed asset of the entire event. So I would say something really neat for you guys to consider in your unique neighborhoods if there's an opportunity. So what went wrong? Just quickly, sponsorship sales. So we thought maybe that would be an opportunity for us to raise some money. People like, they're coming anyway, and I don't have enough room for them. So didn't do well on the sponsorship side. We obviously failed when we didn't hugely promote this event because, again, there was a lot of fear about what the visitation would look like. And then it took a long time for us to figure out who was going to take the lead. And then again, we assumed that people knew about the eclipse. And this is where I started with Jen. Like, we assumed that they would know that it's this day and this time and this is what to expect. And I can't tell you how many businesses we talked to, like Best Buy and Wendy's. They didn't really have any idea it was coming. So that was a miss for us. Next slide. So we underestimated how many people would be interested in getting information about our destination. So we took 7,800 phone calls leading up to it, over 10,000 emails, Facebook messages. It really was a full-time job of 2 or 3 people to just keep up with visitor inquiries because they want to know, where can they view, what's going on in your community leading up to this. So that was a big miss for us. The amount of educating that we would have to do. And then the key turnover position. So again, whatever's going on in your agency and however you're participating, make sure somebody else is in the know. Turnover does happen. And then that mass exodus and traffic the day of. So this isn't in the presentation, but I'll hop off quickly. So Wyoming Game and Fish Department was responsible for our governor that day, and he wanted to be at Glendale Reservoir. So it's great. He and his wife are on a boat in the reservoir. They experience the eclipse, but they go home and they can't get home. So they end up behind him across private property all the way back to Cheyenne to get him there. So think about your VIPs. This also happens when school is in session. So I'd be thinking about, does school need to not be in session, or how are we going to move our kids around safely, especially if there's going to be a lot of extra traffic on the road that Monday. Next slide. So strange but true, and I love that Dr. Kelly is on here. So early on, or 18 months before, we got a call in my office from NASA asking for our safety plan. And when you call the tourism office and ask for a safety plan, no one really understands what that means. It took us a while to figure out that we just needed to get them connected to county management. So I share that lightly, but literally you have no idea when they call what you're supposed to be doing. You just know it's probably serious. The highest room rate for us was $1,300 for a hotel room for one night. Many of our big flags were 5 nights, $750 a night. So I'm not sure what you're already seeing in your market, but you will sell hotel rooms around this. Nearly every person at the planning table wasn't there. We did get a call from the Washington Post a couple weeks before the event that asked how many body bags were mass suicide. So I did call my county coroner and said, okay, Connie, how many bags did we order? So, well, we just placed our regular order, Brooke, of 350 every couple of years. So we didn't see anything like that, which leads me to, there's a lot of fear around crime and what's happening and who chases the eclipse and who's coming to our community. And the only people who were cited that period of time, that 5 days, were people who actually lived in Wyoming. So our visitors were very well behaved. So the outcomes, this might wrapping up here. 83% of our residents participated in the festival. So it actually it was a nice bump in resident sentiment for us. So it was a neat way for everybody to come together and experience something they were very proud of as a community. Majority of people who stayed in Wyoming were from out of state, so it will drive that out of state visitation for you. Our average traveler spent $931 over the course of their trip. So they spend money when they come, which is great. And then 76% of them said it was their first time to Casper. So I'm guessing you'll see that in Cleveland as well. 32% said they'd make a trip, which is great news for us too. And it's something that people want to know. So the next slide, this is my last slide. It's the path, which Dr. Kelly showed of 2024. But according to astronomy.com, I see that Lima and Cleveland are on the top 20 list for viewing in 2024. So with that, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brooke. We really appreciate all that information. And even though the size and scope of Casper, Wyoming, Cleveland are fairly different, it's so fascinating to hear the impact on another community. And we're very grateful that we have you as a resource to ask questions to. And I'm sorry that you did not have the same when you guys were planning, because I can imagine that was a tough thing to figure out all on your own. So thank you for all of that. Just a couple quick slides from me before I turn it over to Jen Kramer. Again, I'm helping to oversee sort of the overarching planning through the local organizing committee. And as Brooke shared, they sort of had their own model for how they did community planning. So just a couple quick slides on what our local approach here has been thus far. Just over a year ago, we started to convene a local organizing committee. We have actually been approached for years from the team at NASA Glenn and a group of astronomers and museums and attractions locally who have been getting together and talking for years about how to best get the community prepared for this event. So there was a lot of ground already covered. But we decided to, as the tourism arm, step in and just do what we often do with major events and help to coordinate efforts. So Destination Cleveland is not putting on a large festival like Casper did. There is no sort of like one event that's going on. Instead, we have convened a nice chunk of entities and organizations across the region who are all doing their own thing to capitalize on the solar eclipse. And we are helping to make sure that those efforts, everyone's aware of each other's efforts, and that we're helping to coordinate them and curate them to make it easy for visitors to find information, visitors and locals to be able to find information on how to view the total eclipse and what's going on. So the vision for the local organizing committee is here. It's for Cleveland to be the epicenter for all activities and events related to the 2024 eclipse. Our goals as a committee are to drive hotel occupancy and visitation, to leverage national media. You heard Brooke talk about the coverage that they got. So we would like to get ourselves to be a primary media hub for coverage. We'd like to take an opportunity to elevate ourselves as a leader in research, science, and aerospace. We are so fortunate to have NASA Glenn here. And really, this is an opportunity to showcase them and the magnificent companies we have in this industry. We'd like to set the standard for how a community plans large events, and with a focus on DEIA efforts, execute on a successful event with highly coordinated local planning, and maximize visitor experience while they're here. So you may have heard Brooke share in her presentation, whether we do all the efforts that we're doing or we don't, people are coming. And so really the opportunity here is to capitalize on the fact that people that have never been to Cleveland before will descend upon our community. How do we remind them they're in Cleveland and that they want to come back again? So we'll be making sure that they have a good experience, as Brooke mentioned, making sure that the safety and logistics committee through Cuyahoga County and Lorain County Emergency Management Office are coordinated with the events that are taking place. And that we do everything we can as a community to make sure that there's a positive experience for those who come to visit and those who just get out of their house to discover it with us. Just a quick slide to show the structure of the committee. There is a steering committee representative of leaders across half a dozen organizations locally, including Destination Cleveland, NASA Glenn, Cleveland Metro Parks, Cuyahoga Valley National Park, Downtown Cleveland, Incorporated, and other entities as well. I'll show you a list of some of our participating organizations on the next slide. There are 4 subcommittees that report up into the steering committee: event management and logistics, marketing and communications, local and regional engagement, and our prepared and readiness committee, which often exists across all of the major events that Destination Cleveland has helped support through this committee model. This is a growing list. And there are others that we have had conversations with, met with, included in other ways as well. But this is the list of those organizations thus far who are part of the local organizing committee. The approach that we're taking locally is really that all of these organizations listed here are really doing their own planning efforts, deciding what works for their specific community or their specific organization, and sharing what they're planning through the local organizing committee. And Destination Cleveland is really serving as the curator of all of that and ensuring that everyone's aware of each other's efforts and that we are communicating it onto a landing page and getting information out to locals and visitors, and then sharing everything that's going on and more broadly across the community outside of just those that are planning. So those efforts are really kicking off. I'm going to allow Jen Kramer to take over at this point. She will share information as she oversees our marketing and communications subcommittee and serves as our senior director of leisure, local, and institutional marketing for Destination Cleveland, about where you can find what all of these organizations are doing. Jen, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. So thank you. Good morning to everybody. Just want to give you a high-level view of where we've been the last several months and where we are continuing to go until next April. So on the next slide, you can kind of see the look and feel of some of our marketing communications efforts. If you haven't seen it already, we are excited to bring this together. And we've done this for those of you who have been on the journey with us to bring big events to Cleveland. You've known that we've used our Cleveland brand and extended it a little bit to deliver a consistent message around large events. You've seen probably things like this for the NFL draft, the NBA All-Star game, and this event and the magnitude of it is no different. So we want to make sure that we are delivering our messaging in a strong, consistent way. On the next slide, you'll see how this kind of manifests in itself. So we do have 2 logo executions, brand statements. A blackout to remember is one. The leader of the 2, though, is the land of going all out. If you're familiar with Destination Cleveland's Evolved brand, you'll see a lot of the land and a lot of brand statements talking about our fine destination. With each execution, obviously, we're including the date of the blackout just to keep it top of mind, and then also the location that we want people to go to see the eclipse. A couple of Jen, if you can go back one more, some of the design execution we've used on glasses. We've started to develop glasses already. We've started to communicate some or create some communications, namely to go to the women's Final Four this earlier this year. Many of you know that the women's Final Four next year is April 5th through the 7th, and the solar eclipse lands on the 8th. So busy week and weekend here in Cleveland. And so we wanted to make sure that those folks knew that they had the opportunity to extend their stay a little bit if they wanted to have some basketball and then watch the eclipse with us. On the next page, you'll see the landing page, and this is really what a lot of our focus will be for the next several months, to Jen's point, to Brooke's point, just making sure that people have a place to go to learn as much as they can about the eclipse, what activities are being planned, and how to plan their trip accordingly. On the next slide, you'll see a couple call outs that just want to highlight. One will be making sure that we're going to be asking people to sign up for emails. They are our Destination Cleveland emails. So many of you already probably, hopefully, receive our This is CLE communications. And then also there's a visitor version called Visit CLE, which will start to communicate more and more about the event as the days go on. We will also have a lot of content, blogs and so forth that will give folks a better idea of what they can expect in the destination. So curating information from partners who have been very much involved in this effort thus far. So the Great Lakes Science Center, Cleveland Museum of Natural History. This is a very family-friendly event. So we want to make sure folks know that when they bring their families, there will be things to do outside of those nearly 4 minutes of darkness. And then the outdoorsy folks are coming in. So where can they go to experience what Cleveland has to offer from an outdoor and recreation perspective? This part will continue to evolve as we know more and generate content. So this will be a great place to find out, have with updates and find out more information as we know more too. There's also a planning element to it. So it extends into the hotel deals, where to stay, know before you go. With each event that we host, major event particularly, we have a very robust know before you go effort, if you will, and making sure that folks know exactly what the layout is, where they can find certain things, and again, where the events are, the things to do in the parks and outdoor activities will continue to grow. On the next slide, you'll see probably the biggest call to action in terms of the marketing communications element is really submitting the events to our website. It's very easy to do for those of you who are familiar with this process. No different, except that we ask that you click the 2024 solar eclipse button, and so that we can curate all eclipse related information onto the page. So again, folks know exactly where to go and what to do and what to expect. On the next slide, you'll see kind of a fun take we had on our marketing communications up until this point. We really leveraged the 1 year out to start getting the word out about the eclipse, what to kind of expect, and really to position Cleveland as the place to go on the path of totality. We have some neighboring cities that are also experiencing this, but we do want people to come here and experience Cleveland with the hope, of course, that they will come back and continue to come back and bring friends and family. So we did develop a little bit of a racing game. The idea is that you race to Cleveland before it gets dark. We were able to really use this in our PR efforts, our marketing efforts, and just have a little bit of fun with this major event. And again, just raising Cleveland to the top of mind. There are 2 tracks with the game, downtown and Lake Erie. There may or may not be a third as we go on. But on those tracks, you will see iconic things, features, Lake Erie, the West Side Market, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you'll go along, you'll pick a car, Team Sun or Team Moon, and you'll make your way to Cleveland before it gets dark, and the screen does get dark. You will get your score, and we encourage people to not only play the game, but to share their score, and if they did, they were entered into a sweepstakes to come to Cleveland for the event. We would host them, and we do have our winners coming next year, so we are very excited about that. On the next slide, you'll see kind of how the game helped us leverage our PR efforts. Again, we really did focus on the 1 year out just to start seeding this event and getting people to understand what it all meant. The collaboration amongst the community has been incredible so far, and I know it will continue. And so the PR teams from the main attractions and businesses that Jen mentioned, I've mentioned, really did have worked together to make sure that messaging was consistent and make sure that the folks who needed to answer the right questions from media did so and were the subject matter experts per request. So there are about 62 clips secured in the March-May timeframe that highlighted Cleveland's position and then also started talking about our plans. There was coverage across all the local stations, and even some national folks gave us some love. So the Washington Post and USA Today. And then the game was really kind of a nice thing to cut through some of the marketing clutter of other destinations and other folks trying to get people to their destinations. So we were able to secure some placements within Travel and Leisure, Smithsonian Magazine, Thrillist, and others, which are just top of the tier for us in terms of our efforts. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jen.
Thanks so much, Jen. Lots of Jens in our office. So wrapping up, and then we will open the floor back up for questions. Just a few reminders of what we covered today. So as Jen Kramer just shared, our sort of big call to action is for any of you on the call who are hoping to host some kind of event or watch party related to the eclipse, we would love for you to submit them to our page. The page is listed here. Again, we will send this deck out and encourage you to sign up for our emails, which is the next reminder. But if you go onto our page, and for those of you that are familiar with Destination Cleveland on our event submission page, it will look very familiar to you. We just ask that you specifically click the solar eclipse category at the bottom of the submission, and that will let our system know automatically that it needs to populate over to the landing page. We do have a team that will be reviewing as well, but that helps streamline some of those efforts. So please get your event submitted. Please do head over to the landing page to sign up for emails, to stay in the know more directly on all things related to the eclipse. And then also, as mentioned, there is an annular eclipse happening in October. So just save the date. It's like our little appetizer for the total eclipse. But we'll give you a nice sneak peek of what an eclipse is like, even though it's not a total, and get us prepared as a community for what's coming. So those are our reminders. I do want to just a big thank you to our guest speakers today. I think this information was incredible. We know we have a lot more to answer and a lot more to plan as a community and a lot deeper to get, but felt like this was a really good opportunity to just drive some general awareness about the eclipse and the need to knows. So this will not be the only time you hear from us. We will certainly be constantly communicating information out. But thank you so much to our presenters. I will go ahead and ask them to come back on camera and unmute yourselves, and we will go ahead and try to get to as many questions as we can. As mentioned, if you did ask a question and we're not able to get to it in time, we do want to be cognizant of time and end right at noon. We will try to get you a response and follow up with you directly if you leave your name with your question. So kicking off, I know there was some questions related to kind of outside of Cleveland. Will we be working with other communities that are working hard to leverage this in the region, and also a question around other counties? I can kick off that one, but please feel free to jump in, anyone on the team. The answer to that overall is absolutely yes. There are some initial communities that are already engaged in planning. So City of Avon Lake is an example, is part of the local organizing committee. We're very aware of their efforts. We've had some conversations with Bay Village. We've had some conversations with various pieces and parts of Lorain County, not the county specifically. But there is a plan, sort of a proactive plan to be able to get out and have those conversations. Myself and some of the Destination Cleveland team will be giving a presentation to the Mayors and Managers organization later this summer to make sure we give them a very similar presentation as this, and help have them invite their communities to partake. Any of them can submit events and do all the things that anyone is doing right now. And our intention is to promote everything going on in the whole region, not just in City of Cleveland and not just Cuyahoga County. Given that the center line is Avon Lake and that is Lorain County, we intend to be intentionally side by side with Lorain County. But again, you can view this eclipse throughout all of Northeast Ohio. And so we will be talking to other counties, as well as other destination marketing organizations, convention and visitors bureaus. Destination Cleveland has been connected in this way when there's a major event, when we hosted Republican National Convention and other of the major sporting events. So we have a little bit of a template to be able to kick those efforts off. But again, this one's slightly different because we don't have an overarching organization entity sort of telling us how this needs to be. We get to take control of it. So we do want to start bringing those counties and communities into the conversation and see what worked best for them and how we can best promote and leverage what they're doing. So I will move over to a question for Brooke. So Brooke, a little bit of context. There has been some questions around given the time of 3/13, what will the schools do? Locally, it's kind of end of school day. You think about busing. So the question for you was, did the eclipse take place during a school day, and sort of how did the community react to that?
So it was August 21st, so school was not in session, so we didn't have that. Casper College actually was planning to move students into the dorm that day, so it was a Monday to get off that fall season, and they just bumped it by 2 days. So we went around it, but as I've traveled the U.S. and helped communities kind of work through some of those, a lot of them have decided, hey, I don't want to move my kids around that day. I'd rather just have them in my backyard viewing the eclipse. So I'm not sure if your districts will make that decision, but it's definitely something to consider.
Thank you. Dr. Cork, I'm gonna toss this over to you. Let me know if you think you can answer, but there is just some questions around what others, I guess, does Cleveland have an advantage as a viewing location? And if so, what is it? And what are the other cities that are sort of in competition for best viewing, in your opinion? So that's kind of the part, and I guess any thoughts on contingencies around weather or like what we should think about?
Yes, Cleveland is definitely a hot spot to view. First of all, you have amazing resources. You have that beautiful Lake Erie, so it's a great natural place to watch the eclipse. And you've got plenty of time in terms of actually seeing the darkness, so that's great. Now, weather, yeah, I'm from Michigan, grew up in Michigan. Realize that April 8th could be 7° in shorts, or it could be 2 feet of snow. We know that. So what I have been thinking is basically, how do you plan for that? How do you make something that is timeless? You will still see it go dark. It will still go dark. Even if it's snowing, it's going to go dark at that point in time. Now, again, a huge snowstorm, that's a whole nother issue. But light snow or cloud cover, what else can you do? Is there a way to partner with science fairs? Is there a way to have a job fair that's also associated with this? Is there a way that this really just highlights other pieces of your community to make it a community event and a way to stick together, and maybe have a backup of a live feed from a telescope in Mexico or in Texas that might have some better weather? But again, we don't know until probably the few days out. But best case scenarios, we have one of those beautiful 60, 70-degree days in April, and everyone's outside to enjoy it.
Thank you. Jen Kramer, I'm going to pose this one to you. I'm kind of combining some questions, but there was a question around how do we plan to advertise the different events? Someone was glancing at the website and all they saw was the Great Lakes Science Center and the NASA stuff downtown. So a little bit of detail on how you'll find events on the page. And there was also a question around, is there a deadline for submitting events? If you want to talk to both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what is on the website now, as I mentioned, it will continue to grow. If leading up to the 1 year out, we did have a lot of robust content on the site too. So, but obviously April 8th this year has gone, so those events had to come down. But it will continue to evolve, especially as we work through the summer and start really looking toward that 10/14 date for the annular eclipse. That'll start getting the top of mind, and we'll be starting to populate more content and the events that we're receiving. But on that note, we do need to receive the events. And I say that knowing full well too that a lot of people are still figuring out what they're doing and things like that. But I will tell you, as soon as your events are available, please submit them, because not only is that helpful for us, it's helpful for you, but it helps us position ourselves a little bit differently than some of the other communities and what they're offering for the solar eclipse. So no deadline. As we get closer to the event, I would say that we probably will give you a deadline, just so our content team, who works very hard to do all this, can get everything up and correct and all the things with your help, of course. But the sooner you know anything, even if it's just dates, please submit them if you can't provide the detail, just so we have a good high level view of all that is occurring that week, that weekend. There's a lot already in the works, so we want to be mindful of that. We want to know about that. And then also too, there's opportunities to update as you finalize details too. So more to come on that, but the sooner the better.
Thanks, Jen. And just reiterating what Jen shared, there are a lot of events from those organizations that we listed from local organizing committee that are currently in plan mode and just haven't been final detail being able to be announced. And of course, they'll want to announce their own events before submitting them to us. So there is really excited stuff in the works that will very soon be starting to be announced. There was a question around how to become a dedicated viewing space. Hopefully you got a little bit of an answer of that. You just kind of decide that you want to partake. And as of right now, there are entities kind of doing their own planning and sort of how they're funding it, what they want to do, but there are certainly resources and we're happy to step in, have a conversation, have a meeting about what you're looking to do and connect you over to the right people, places, and things to get what you need. And then if and when you decide to move forward with that, again, it would just be a matter of submitting your event and making sure that we have that information to push it over. But related, there was a question around how far outside of downtown do we expect hotels to be affected? I think the short answer is significantly. As Jen Kramer mentioned, Cleveland is host to the Women's Final Four event, and that is happening the weekend leading up to Monday's total solar eclipse. Championship games run through Sunday evening. So those that are coming into downtown, and downtown will be pretty much sold out for Women's Final Four, will not be checking out likely until Monday. And so downtown will be pretty booked up if for anyone that would be planning to come in early and get there in advance of Monday's eclipse, which creates a great compression opportunity outside of downtown for our regional hotel systems. Every single community that we have talked to that was part of the 2017 total eclipse has said hotel occupancy has been through the roof. We got a chart from one of our Smith Travel Research agencies that showed us on the path of totality in 2017, occupancy in those cities was ranging from like the low end 94%, the high end 100% in their regional hotel clusters. So these people will come. As Dr. Horrick mentioned, we do have a little bit of a different advantage point for those that do regularly go and seek eclipses, and that we do have being able to technically see it by water and being able to see it through unobstructed views, having the lakefront and all of the shorelines that we have and the activations that will be going on across our shoreline. And as those of you familiar with our organization know, from a tourism standpoint, Cleveland is within like a 6-hour driving radius from tons of other destinations. So from a just positional standpoint of ease of getting somewhere to view the eclipse on the path of totality, we have a really nice position to be able to leverage this opportunity. So certainly expecting lots of visitation. We do have a handful of questions that have gone unanswered, but I know it is 11:59. So please, if you haven't yet, submit your name associated with your question. We will be able to download these questions after the fact and be able to get to response for them. So apologies that we couldn't get to all of them today, but I'm really excited we have as many questions as we have. So we will continue to get them answered for you. But any final words really quick from our speakers?
I just want to say good luck and enjoy it. I mean, it really is a neat deal where you live in a community where you can walk out your front door and see what's going on in the sky. I mean, it's unbelievable it's come to you. So really just take advantage of that opportunity. It's spectacular.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cork and Brooke and Jen Kramer for everything today. We really appreciate your time and your planning to get us here today and for all your answers to the questions. And thank you to all of our attendees today. As a reminder, this has been recorded. We will send it out with a recap for all of you. We will get your questions answered. And thank you to the team at ThunderTech for supporting our Tourism Talk series. And we hope to see all of you very soon. Have a great week.
Recording